one keynote panel with our esteemed panel of industry influencers and also good friends. I'm joined today by Jamie Hopkins, Aaron Wood, and Tyrone Ross. And one of the most amazing aspects about our wealth tech, fintech, and advice tech communities is that we love a good portmanteau by adding tech to the end of everything. No. In all seriousness, it's that we just truly get to know each other from being involved in the industry, and I cannot be more pleased with this very cool group that we've assembled for this conversation today. My name is Shannon Rossick, for those of you that don't know me, and I will be your moderator for this panel. And today you might know my work as the Director of Wealth Stack Content Solutions at Informa and the parent company of wealthmanagement.com. And in my decade-long career, which is crazy to say out loud, in the financial services industry, I've spent my time interviewing and interacting with some of the most influential firms and people in the industry, and today is certainly no exception. The goal of today's panel is to learn more about how this diverse group of panelists are paving the way to elevate the human advice experience while staying on the forefront of technology. Obviously, a topic very near and dear to my heart and everyone on this session. So we'll hear from a bank trust, a mid-sized national RIA, and a boutique digital-first RIA to gain insight into how our audience can take away best practices and actions for their own practices. And as always, we encourage the audience to engage with speakers. And if you can relate to what you're hearing, please certainly share your response through the emojis on your screen. So in the next, 55 minutes or so, we'll be addressing 5 topics that were sourced from our community for this panel. So with that, I want to go ahead and get started. And again, I just want to start off by saying thank you for investing in our shared community and taking the time personally to share your insights and vision on the advice profession. What an incredible panel we have. So let's get to know our speakers today. I cannot do your incredible careers justice, so let's hear directly from you. And Jamie, let's start with you, and please introduce yourself, your role in the organization, your firm origin impact, and all the good stuff.
Thank you. It's great to see everyone. Thanks for having me on here. I like the thing about adding tech to everything, and then I was thinking Tyrone should probably have a holding company called like Ross Tech or something, and you can just hold everything in there. So that's a good one. So I'm here today as Chief Wealth Officer of Wisvis and Bryn Mawr Trust, and I've gotten a lot of great experiences over the years. Gotten to work with actually both of the fantastic people joining me here today at different times. And where I sit today, I get to see a lot of different portions of the wealth world, from private banking, consumer banking, the trust business side, family offices, and the RIA space. So it's been fun this last year. I've been here about a year just to see all these different parts. I also sit as president of FinServe Foundation. So we work with about 600, kind of up and coming next gen in our profession. And that gives me a whole other view, because like how they view tech and how they view this industry is vastly different than me, who's, almost 20 years now in this industry, which, when you said 10, I'm like, oh man, I feel old here now too. But that's what I do. It's thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So I won't say that we probably have a century of combined experience on this call or anything like that. Got it. No, in all seriousness, Aaron would love to hear from you.
I think I have you all beat together as the oldest person on the panel, and that's not fair to do to a woman, right? So I am Aaron Wood, Senior Vice President of Financial Planning for Carson Group, which, as you said, is a large RIA in the industry. I have been at the head of financial planning here for the last 7 years, and in that role have really had the ability to watch how Carson has shaped the financial advice arena and how we have helped our clients move from what was a much smaller firm when I got here 7 years ago to now a firm that is serving over 50,000 clients. They're at 40 billion in assets today, and we do that through an array of partnerships with advisors across the country. So we have 150 locations of partners and wholly owned Carson Wealth offices that join our RIA to help them across the advice spectrum, investments, technology, and wealth. And we get to really go hand in hand with them and our coaching members through Carson Coaching And this has really always been an advisor driven platform in the sense that it was built by an advisor, and today it is still driven by advisors. And so we meet with our coaching members and our partners on a regular basis to decide what is best for their clients and their advisors. And then we step in to help them solve that and deliver the best experiences possible.
Thank you, Aaron, for that background and context. All right, Tyrone, take us home with intros.
I'm Tyrone Ross, CEO and co-founder of Turnkey Labs, which is a crypto data company, and CEO of 401 Financial, which we are calling the next gen RIA for the right now investor. Our goal is simple: to make financial services more affordable, accessible, and personal to anyone who wants it, regardless of color, creed, denomination, zip code, or anything else. And more importantly, I am the son of superhero parents, Carol and Tyrone Ross. Happy to be here.
All right, well, let's get into the meat of our conversation and really set the stage here and talk about each of your firm's journey into advice delivery. So, Jamie, going back to you, we've seen a lot of companies prioritize more financial planning and advice delivery as the market of consumers, has expected more from their financial professionals. We see it in the headlines all the time. So help us understand the evolution of advice delivery up to the current state of your financial advice offerings now.
Yeah, I don't think we have time for all of that. So WISPA is actually 192 years old. So they talk about combined experience. It's been around a really, really long time. Really in the trust side of the world, right? So setting up trusts in Delaware. That's kind of where the origin of this, and serving the local community from really a banking standpoint, which was a much different world, right? 192 years ago. But where it's kind of evolved is where I think a lot of businesses, a lot of firms are trying to get to today. And you see the reports, right? Consumers and customers and Americans, everybody, and not just in America, but want more of a one-stop shop for advice, right? Like they don't want to have 17 people, disparate systems that don't talk, no communication. It's really hard to do planning in that environment. So I think a large part of where I sit today is how do we take some of the services that we deliver, like trust services, out to firms in a more tech forward way. And it's been really my biggest accomplishment over this last year is moving that forward, where we're partnering with firms and bringing that to the table. But and Tyrone and I have talked about this before. There's still parts of the world that, even as the banking world hasn't succeeded here, like we do still need to get banking out to more Americans. We do need to get lending in an easier way out to more Americans. And, in our backyard, we're like one of the worst areas in Philadelphia. So that's a big goal for kind of next year locally, is like, how do we have an impact at that level? And I know one of the sponsored company here that we're supporting is Philly Financial, who runs Philadelphia Financial Week. They're fantastic, and we're trying to partner with them to help bring that out to more people. But that requires different solutions, not just technology, but a commitment to it. And I think that's where the evolution is. If you tie all those things together, right? It's technology, it's holistic services, and then bringing advice to everybody, not just a small portion of the population.
Absolutely. And I saw a lot of head nodding when you were mentioning democratizing lending and banking. So, Aaron, I'm curious, when it comes to Carson, how have you guys evolved when it comes to advice delivery? And what are you working on in terms of current advice offerings?
Yeah, I would absolutely concur with Jamie. When I came to Carson 7 years ago, it was with this idea that financial planning doesn't have to be so difficult, and that we have really had this really separate services, separate technologies, poor advisors sitting down, taking 10 hours to enter data into a financial plan. And we are never going to be able to deliver advice to the masses if we have this excessive amount of data entry. And so one of the biggest things we focused on once I got here was, how do we really put everyone in the right place at the right time to deliver advice in the moments that clients really need it? And we started that with a couple of things. One, the advanced solutions team, which all reports to me, are all those areas of advice. So we have the financial planners, the tax team, the trust team, retirement plans and insurance, all in one division. And those individuals cross-function from division to the other divisions, so that we're really making sure an advisor comes to us with a question and they don't have to pick up the phone and ask a question, and then someone goes, I think an ILET's a really good idea. And they're like, how do you do that? And I don't know, call the insurance department. And they hang up and call someone else. We wanted to break down those barriers so that when someone came to us, they could get their advice in all one place and get exactly to the place they needed to be. And in addition to that, how do we really overcome this data issue that we're talking about? And so we've been working on building our data warehouse since before I even got here. And now we're to the part that we are really forward in that, and we're able to use that data in a much more meaningful way. We've integrated our financial planning system so that the data does talk to each other, which reduces that data entry for our advisors. And it goes from our client experience to the financial planning tool to our CRM. And so that helps us allow advisors to give more advice to more people. And hopefully, as everyone else I think is going to concur with, is once you can do that, then you can start going into additional markets and helping more people.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to put a pin in the data side of things. It's the four-letter word in our industry right now, but I know we'll get into that here in a little bit. But Tyrone, I just, wrapping up on this thought, especially as a boutique digital first RIA, what has your approach been when it comes to advice delivery right now, and kind of what's on your mind right now?
A lot. But our goal when we launched 401 2 years ago was to simply break the existing model and destroy all of the barriers between us and our end client. So we wanted to go after that 25 to 45 segment, but we wanted to do it in a way that we knew was the most difficult, challenging way that everyone was going to ignore. So what we did was something simple. We built our client experience from the firm out, not the client in. So what do I mean by that? We were obsessive about what the client would experience when they touch 401. That started with our branding. It started with the words. It started with the colors and the scheme of our marketing. We spent a lot of money on when someone sees 401, we wanted to evoke an emotion so they go, hey, what's that? Which is why 90+% of our clients are working an advisor for the first time. That was one. Second thing was, when they onboard with us, if they're new to the industry, we want them to go, oh man, like it's that easy. Right? But we knew there was ways we were going to have to break that. So we worked really hard to create an experience that I believe there's almost 70 million wealth management clients in the industry. I would gladly take all 70 million of them through our onboarding flow. And I think it's something that it will illuminate a lot of, well, wait, why isn't it like this? Last thing we wanted to do was, how do we make it so that the planning is with the client, not for the client? So we meet with our clients monthly. We have a dashboard in Notion that we build the financial plan for them, add a picture, add goals. We do health planning. So we wanted to break the existing model, not because we don't think that this is better or whatever, just because this needed to exist. And then we wanted to say, okay, fine. How is this a bridge to bring people in? And sure, if you decide to go on to Carson or wherever else, that means we did our job, because we took you from a net worth of 0 to a net worth of 10 million. Rinse, repeat, right? And we keep doing that. So that's essentially what we wanted to do. We just looked at the industry, and there were a lot of things that frustrated me. I am a wirehouse baby, so I have a lot of frustrations, right? So I was like, how do we literally break the existing model and do it in a new and fresh way and bring more people in? And I think we've succeeded at that.
Love it. Move fast and break stuff. I respect that. So, Tyrone, I'm actually going to keep picking on you for a little bit, because I'm curious about what your perspective on tech-enabled advice is, and where advisors need to invest in themselves and their practices to remain relevant, really as entrepreneurs and professionals. And bonus, as a follow-up to this loaded question, what are the threats and opportunities that should be top of mind for these particular advisors?
I think folks will be shocked by my answer here, because we are right on the cutting edge of technology and voice to voice and doing a lot of cool things that I can't wait to show. But here's where I think advisors can really make a big difference in their technology. Advisors are not making most of their existing tech stack as it is. I think if advisors focused on drilling deeper into all of the tech that they pay all that money for, they will unlock so much value, right? And I said, now, with that said, I think they can get rid of probably half of it. But I think if advisors drill down on a lot of the awesome tool, and I probably demoed everything, I think there's so much value there to be unlocked. And I think it's exciting to see that there are firms now that are starting to nibble on the edges of AI and some things that are there. But I just don't think advisors drill down enough into their existing technology and all of the cool things that could be done. And I think if they did that, I think that will give them a leg up. The other thing is, when we announced publicly that we were using Notion for a lot, right? Like Notion is our core hub for everything. All of the advisors were like, "Oh my gosh," right? But it's like Notion has way more users than any of the probably technology that you use. It's safe, it's secure, right? So I think if advisors kind of peeked over the fence, not necessarily use these tools, but just to see the functionality and the experience, low code, no code type of tools, what a Zapier could do for automation. I think it's really easy to go, wow, okay, we can replace this with this, or we can bolt on to what we're already using. And now what you do is you free yourself up to go, maybe these meetings don't need to be an hour. They could be more effective at 45 minutes, 15 minutes across all of our clients. We solve these many problems for these many clients. It leaves us this much time. I think that's important. So I think if advisors just kind of focused on optimizing what we already have, right? Portfolio optimization and optimize your technology. I think if more firms focused on that, I think the ROI for everyone would be high. And if we're really truly a client focused industry, if we do that, we're adding more to our clients. And I think that's not talked about enough.
I would have to agree. So, Jamie, you also have an interesting perspective, as you mentioned in your intro, because you do work with the FinServ Foundation and you have that perspective, especially from younger generations coming in on how they're viewing technology. So, what's your advice when it comes to tech-enabled advice and where advisors need to invest in themselves?
Yeah, I will second one of Tyrone's points there is like, I mean, there's tons of studies on this. McKinsey always puts out a study in general on tech adoption, and it's super low. So like 90% of the time you're using very few functionality and parts of the tech that you have. And I will add a second part of that, which is try not to, for most advisory firms, unless you're really tech forward, like try not to overly customize stuff that already exists out there. What I
Yes.
see is 90% of the time, everybody wants to make it so unique to their firm and change all the functionality, and then it doesn't work great. Well, the reality is like you're probably better in most situations leaving it to somebody else, use what they have. And that was kind of a philosophy I had when I came in here. It's like I did not want to redo that. Aaron knows from before, we learned this lesson a couple times of like trying to redo everything to make it work for like a different version of it. And it's hard for tech providers to continuously support you then in that world. So I really like some of the stuff that's coming out. While I don't use them, like I love the notion of what AdviceTech has put together and kind of being more of a one-stop shop and home for people. And I've told Lee, like if I was starting my own firm from scratch today, I have no desire to put together tech stacks as a living. And I would probably just use them, use everything, and just like whatever their flows are, use it. Now, but to Tyrone's point, like he's building something that's going to differentiate from the box offerings out there. But he's got that mindset, he's got that vision, he knows tech, he can do it. So I do worry about that for people who aren't real tech forward, don't love technology. If you don't love it, don't spend the time on it. Spend time where you love and really more or less outsource that. I do think that people use too many pieces of technology. I've looked at a lot of firms over the years, and when I see everything they're trying to use, ultimately, a lot of times people are adding a piece of technology that might be 5% better than something they get for free with another technology provider. And I think that's very inefficient. It's a waste of money. You talked about ROI, like you're losing money on those. You're not making your firm better. And so I do think, doing a tech review and saying, are there things we can shutter, get rid of, and double down on some of the tools that you already have at your disposal? I think that's really good. And then do the clients care about some of it? I hear firms saying, oh, they really need this one. And the clients probably don't care about it. You probably could get rid of it and then free time up to spend on something that they actually do care about. I think that's core in the technology world. And then I'll add one other piece and pass off, which is, where's the data end of day? You brought that up before. Like, do you own it? Can you port it? Is it going to transfer back and forth? It's going to be really hard to make good client experiences if the data is really off in a silo somewhere else with somebody else that's not pushing back to you. Aaron talked about integrating that, but that's like one of my biggest concerns. I think one day we could end up in a world where legally clients have a right to their full data file. And if this is all packaged all over the place, like it's going to be really hard to comply with that. It's not occurring in the next couple years, but when you look out 5 to 10 years, there could be a world where we wake up that clients have a legal right to their data file. And really most advisory firms would have no way to transfer those out and meet that type of obligation long term.
well, not to scare everyone then who's tuning in, but that might be coming down the pike. But I think, what is it? The average is something like folks are using at least 9 pieces of technology in their stack. And to Jamie, your point, and Tyrone, your point, it's half the time you're either not using it or utilizing it to its full capabilities. So you're just kind of spinning your wheels just to have bells and whistles that maybe aren't adding to that client experience at the end of the day. So not to add something else for advisors to do, but Jamie, like you said, an audit is incredibly important because you need to keep pace and keep up with the pace of change that we're seeing in this industry. You need to be taking a look at your technology on a regular basis. I mean, I make the joke all the time. You look at the FinTech Kitsies map, and it went from what, 40 applications back in the day to now 400. And now, heck, we even have a standalone AI map that's been developed with another 50 applications. So obviously a lot's going on there. And I'm sure we'll see kind of these ebbs and flows, consolidation like we always do in these cycles when it comes to technology. But it can be incredibly overwhelming when advisors are now essentially being asked to be these life coaches and create this holistic view and plan for their clients. The last thing they want to do is say, oh my gosh, I have to learn another new system. So make sure that it is truly valuable to your business and business model at the end of the day. And so, Aaron, just on this topic, I want to wrap it up with you. What is Carson doing then to help advisors, invest in themselves and help them remain relevant, like I said, in a very rapidly changing and competitive landscape?
Yeah, it is. And one of the most interesting things I think about this technology, especially when we look at the different generations, is they think about technology different and they want to use technology different. It was a couple years ago, I had seen a study that said the average financial advisor only changed their financial planning software once every 20 years. So let that set that, like, that's a career. And so, like, when we talk about this idea of like how much technology people are using, there's also one end of the spectrum of individuals who've been using the same technology their whole career and maybe aren't looking at other tools or technologies. And so we have two ends of the spectrum. We have one end where we have an aging population of advisors who are closer to retirement, and many of them are very set in the tools and resources they've been using. And then we have the other end of the advisor, whether it's the individuals coming up through FinServe or our Next Gen program, who are very tech forward. And so trying to find the right balance for advisors and then making sure that we're protecting them. There is so many cool tools out there, but that does not mean they're all technology safe. And that is one of the greatest things about using a firm like Carson, is that we do have a whole provider of technology teams who do the SOC 2s and all of the security testing. And then they have me and my teams who will go in and test all the software. But it can't be to this point of everything customized. When you get too customized, you can't attract advisors if they've been using the same technology for 20 years and your answer is, come over here and we're going to rip your tech stack apart and you're going to start over. That's not going to work. And so we have to find this way to be curated to the advisors of what they're using, and then also enable them to be better. And so bringing in the tools that help them with taking notes, listening to meetings, taking the notes for them, capturing things like that saves advisors time. And so where we've put a lot of focus on is how do we enable the advisors to be faster, to be better, but not to necessarily try and change their processes to a thing that is so change management uncomfortable that they're not going to do it. Because where advisors are best is when they're with their clients and they're having those conversations. And so trying to find those tools that help them improve those and be more efficient, but it should really be frictionless when we do it.
And knowing that Carson takes this approach to tech-enabled advice, I'm just curious where you see the threats and opportunities that really should be top of mind for advisors right now.
Yeah, the biggest threats that I see are the advisors who aren't paying attention to the new tools that are coming out. That is absolutely a threat. And I've been saying this for 7 years. Any technology that we've been using for 20 years is probably not going to be king in the next decade. The tools that are coming out today are much faster, they're integrated. We all walk around with our smartphones, which are curated to our experience, and that is what clients are looking for. So that is the biggest threat I see, is the advisors who are not willing to adopt this new technology and really curate to the clients. And that's also the biggest opportunity as well, right? In the finance industry, we tend to be a little sluggish or slow because regulators hold us up and we all have to do the right thing and make sure that we're protecting our clients. But they're used to that experience. There's not a person who's not walking around today with a smartphone that has everything they want on it. And this is a great opportunity for us to catch up and really deliver those same type of experiences. I mean, I can't remember the last time I walked into a bank. Jamie walked into a bank probably this morning. I haven't walked physically into a bank in a long time. And if someone told me I had to go deposit a check or write a check, I'm not sure that I have the ability. And so like that's the place that we're trying to get to is how do we give everyone this on-demand access to their financial plans and their advice, and to make sure that when they're making a financial decision, does it get them closer to their goal or further away?
That's a great point. And I was going to say, hearing Jamie walk into a bank sounds like the start of a bad joke. And Jamie, I'm just curious too, coming from that perspective and the banking world in particular, what threats and opportunities are you seeing for advisors as well?
Yeah, and actually, I don't go into the bank locations that much, but I did take my son
He's like,
in.
to be fair.
I did take my son in to start his first account. And what I will tell you is there is something about the physical nature of going in somewhere to transact with money that I think is still interesting. I don't believe it's going to stay there forever, but it's a different experience and memory than like clicking on a phone. Like foundationally, you will not remember clicking on a phone and hitting I accept on terms and conditions to something as well as you will like sitting there, having it explained, talking. There is something interesting about that. And actually, the bank world still invests very heavily into colleges because that is very sticky still, right? Like you can think if you went to college, there was some bank that worked at, that had a branch at your university. It's like 90% likely you still bank with them, despite the fact you have no tie, you don't care about them, you don't know anybody there. But like that account somehow stayed for 30 years. It's a very interesting like experience part. The threats and experience and all of that side. Look, I think it really depends on where you are in your career. Like, funny enough, there's so much M&A going on in this space. If you're thinking about selling in the next 5 years to somebody, I don't know that it matters whatsoever what you pick as your tech stack right now, because the reality is you're probably going to sell and they're going to roll something else out new for you. Like, as odd as that sounds, it's like, is it really worth spending any time on right now if you're going to sell your firm? I really don't know. I'll tell you, most firms, when they're looking to acquire, don't care what your underlying tech stack is, except how can they move it into their system, right? Like, I mean, that's the model out there today. What I do think is more of a bigger threat for the industry is things that are going to come up that replicate this industry but are different. And are probably worse and don't look like threats today. So I know Adam Holt's on here, but one of the interesting things, we got to meet Richard Branson last year, and one of the interesting things he said to us was that like disruptive technology or companies usually start out as far inferior offerings to the existing system, but create a different domain to enter into. So a lot of times you think, oh, we're going to get disrupted by somebody else who looks like us. It's usually not, right? It's going to be something, if you look at like private credit today is popping up all over the world and is essentially this unregulated, aspect that is really, come onto the scene and even probably impacted the IPO market. So you look at places like NASDAQ and other places that made money off of pooling IPOs, and all of a sudden private credit is taking away some of that opportunity. You probably never would have thought of that as your risk. You think of other exchanges as your risk or other ways to do it. And I do think we're going to see things that look more like asset management that come in and disrupt, but don't necessarily play by the same rules. The lifestyle coaches I haven't really done it, but they're not far off of it, right? Which is, can we provide all this advice in a much less regulated environment with much cleaner tech with apps and things like that do allow you then to push out to self-directed options very seamlessly? That's one of the biggest risks I think that we could see out there, is somebody really gain traction in kind of a nearby area that puts a lot of stress on the traditional firms.
Absolutely. Hey, Bill Gates said it best when he said, we always overestimate the change that'll occur in the next 2 years and underestimate the change that'll occur in the next 10. So a lot of truth to that, especially in our industry. But I do want to move on to our next topic of discussion. Obviously, the human side of all of this. technology and the human element is starting to go together like peanut butter and jelly. So, Tyrone, I want your perspective here. There's been a lot of conversation around the human role versus increasing, a technology environment between AI and robo advice and all the consumer demand and expectations that we've talked about, especially around digital preferences. And they're all different depending on what generation you're coming from, whether it's Gen X, millennial versus the boomers. So, talk to us about your firm's strategy forward to find the right balance in human versus tech-enabled advice delivery.
So I want to combine a little bit of the question before with this, but the way we do it is it's tech-led, it's human-driven.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things that we want to differentiate, and I think the biggest opportunity here is there's a difference between your service model and what people experience, right? The service model at Disney is the time of your life, no matter age, whatever else, right? But everyone experiences Disney World differently. And I think that's the biggest opportunity and threat for advisors. Your service model should be tight, but everyone is going to experience your firm differently, right? So we have at our firm, we got someone, well, my niece, she's turning 30 this month. I can't wait to rib her on that, but she was in her 20s. She'll be in her 30s, right? So 20s, 30s, and 40s, right? And we give clients a choice. You may not want to deal with me. You may want to deal with Amber. You may want to deal with Eric. You may be from a specific area of the country, and you don't want an energetic guy from New Jersey moving his hands and talking fast and doing all that. So we give clients at first, we say, what do you expect from this relationship? Which is a good question. But the next thing is, what is the best way for you to experience 401? What time of day would you like to meet? What is important to you? What is your first memory of money? Right? What is it that got you to the point where now you feel like you need help, and constantly continuing to answer those questions. So for us, we want to remove anything that doesn't get us right next to the client and going, okay, let's make this something that you experience, you create it, right? Our service is going to be the same. These are the things we're going to do. We're going to build you a financial plan. We're going to meet with you monthly. We're going to add you into our, we use Circle app to create a community for our clients, so they can, commune with one another and share ideas and educate one another. And I'll put the ribbon on it with this. I think the best way now to be a human first advisor or whatever else is making sure that we're having conversations around the client's health, right? And that could be their spiritual health, that could be their mental health or physical health. We rolled out our health planning, and clients love it because we just introduced that into the conversation. And you would be amazed at the depth of the conversations that you would have, and how people are so curious, but also reflecting on, all right, I'm insecure about this area of my life because, and I'll end here. The last thing we want to do is for your portfolio to go up and to the right, and you're dealing with the human and your health goes down, right? And we don't want that, right? We want both of those things to move in concert. But at the end of the year, if we're doing a review and then you hit all these goals and you got bonuses and everything else, but your health has suffered, we did something wrong human to human. Should figure that out. So I think that's the biggest opportunities there. So we just try to remove all the barriers, get on a call with a client and go, listen, there's no agenda. What's going on with you today? What do you want to talk about, right? And it's yielded so many wonderful results. And you really get to know people. And I think that's when they go, man, that's what advisors do? Yep. We didn't even talk about money, right? But it's there in the background.
I think that's a great point, to not even talk about money half the time in those conversations. And at the end of the day, we are in a relationship-based business, which is why, at least as of right now and for the foreseeable future, AI isn't going to take advisors' jobs, because you still need that human element. You need that. And that's why behavioral finance has become so popular, because getting into the psyche and the human is complex, and only another human can understand that. And so that's why I've always looked at technology as the co-pilot to enable you to do your job to the best of your ability. And so you can focus on the things that you do best, which is ultimately serve your clients. And so, Aaron, similar question, how is Carson then approaching that conversation around the human role versus, an increasing technology environment? What's the balancing act?
Yeah, and it is a balancing act. It's ironic you started this off with peanut butter and jelly. Brian Portnoy and I have presented a ton together this year, almost one after the other every single time. And that's what he always says. We are peanut butter and jelly, because he is very focused on this behavioral finance side. And I'm very focused on giving the better advice and doing that through a behavioral way and using technology. And they have focused really heavily on their closed AI. Carson also has built a closed AI. And I do think that's something to talk about here. AI keeps getting talked about all the time, the importance of it, and it is so important. But advisors need to understand there is a difference between ChatGPT, which is an open AI that anybody can access, anybody can put information into it and it learns, and a closed AI. A closed AI is really meant to be your books, your systems, your information you've developed. And that's one of the things we've developed here at Carson as well. We have a closed AI system. It's called Steve. Steve is really here to make sure that operationally, our advisors can ask them any question that is in our systems and get the answer to it. And that's very similar to what Brian Portnoy and Shaping Wealth have done on that behavioral side, is to be able to ask behavioral questions and how do you get answers back on those. And this AI approach of how do we enable our advisors to be able to get something super fast. Google's been great for years, but Google gives bad information too, or it's not always the easiest to find, or you find an article for me from 2019 and the tax laws changed. And so using AI to actually be up to date, know that you're getting the best information, and really enable that advisor then, to Tyrone's point, to have those human connections. That is what our industry is about, is helping humans have better financial lives, helping them accomplish their goals. And any time that we can take something, whether it is our closed AI, our paperwork application, which is now has the ability for the advisor to click on one thing and it fills out all of the paperwork for them, that is taking efficiency to a level that allows those advisors to now have more time and energy to spend with their clients. And I really think that that's how advisors tend to miss most things, right? We have these conversations and we're so distracted. We're always moving 1,000 miles a minute, and they miss something that a client said because they couldn't necessarily hear it, or they were trying to take notes. Well, now with our ability, we use Zox for our transcription services. And if Zox is listening to the conversation, we've had advisors go, you know what, I missed that. Like I was writing a note and I missed something really important she said, but it came up in the notes afterwards, and they were able to go back and say, I would have missed that really important piece of information. And so this is how I really think this AI is going to improve our advisors. It's helping them find the missing information because they're not writing or distracted of trying to take notes. They're able to really focus in on that conversation. And it's no different than talking to your best friend. If you're talking to your best friend, you wouldn't be over here writing something down. You would be looking at them, listening, actively listening to what they were going to say, and then having these tools that can help you then say, you know what, here's the next level. Here's their next best piece of advice or action they should be taking. And that allows those advisors to help the human move up to the next level.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, it's purely a selfish question just because it keeps coming up at industry events. And I was actually joking with Adam Holt about it recently, saying, he was saying, always assume that you're being recorded. So I'm curious, and anyone can jump in on this question, please. But Aaron, for you, are you finding that AI is just now kind of table stakes in these meetings and conversations? Are clients put off by it? Do they understand it? Because now the assumption is when you log into a Zoom or a call or Teams, that you're probably being recorded, which can obviously, going back to the human side of things, change your approach to how you say things, what you share. So, are you still capturing everything that you need to capture from those conversations, knowing that AI is now becoming kind of ever present in these conversations?
And it is, right? I mean, we all logged into Zoom today. And so there's not a Zoom meeting I log into anymore that I don't see somebody's AI companion is in the Zoom meeting. And I think for us that are in this all the time, we are used to it. But what I will say is not all clients are used to that. Not all clients spend their life on Zoom like we do. And that has been a conversation. that I've been coaching our advisors as well, is how do you talk to your client about this before they log in and it's like, Erin's AI companion is here today. You do need to let them know that we are using a digital tool to take notes for us, and make sure that they are okay with it. And usually when we tell them that it's a digital tool to take notes for us, they're like, oh yeah, that's absolutely fine. But I do agree, Shannon, it's everywhere now. And whether it's the AI companion or someone is recording something on their phone, anytime I do media interviews, that's the first thing they say too, can I record this? I think my voice is everywhere now, in YouTube channels and TikToks or whatever it is. And so we are in a digital world, and just knowing that, how do we help our clients understand the tools we're using so that they're comfortable with it? But it also is going to make their financial lives better, because it's using those tools to enable them to be better.
Well, thank you for indulging me on that. But Jamie, I do want to get your perspective on this too, how your firm is approaching and what your strategy is to finding that balance in human versus tech-enabled advice delivery.
Yeah, let me we've been very agreeable the whole time, but we are all friends and known
You
each other
going
for a while.
contrarian?
So I'll take some contrarian views. However, I don't know that I believe these fully, right? They're like the two parts that bounce around in my head. The one, though, is I do see a possibility. Now, I don't think it'll be majority of the population, but I do kind of expect a subsection of the US population to end up in an anti-AI mentality. So if you think about like efficiencies and better stuff does not mean that everybody's going to sign off on it, right? You think about macroeconomics, we want stuff made in the US and we want it stamped with made in the US, and we will pay more and buy that over something that is more efficient and better made elsewhere in the world. That is, a very big part of President Trump's platform, right? Is he wants stuff made in the US, and he will cause prices to increase with tariffs for stuff that's not made here. So there is an anti-efficiency move sometimes because you believe something else is better. I do think we will get a little bit of that. It's occurred in the car world too, right? There are people that are anti-self-driving cars because they want the freedom to get in the car and drive it themselves. And there will be marketing to that endeavor, right? Having the freedom to drive yourself. I do think we will see some anti-AI movements here, probably down to the level that some firms will say, like, we don't give your information to AI on purpose, right? So I think that we could see some of that. Again, I don't think that's going to be the majority, but I do think that that will exist. And it'll probably exist after we have an AI problem, right? Like it'll spur up because AI does something, it automates something and pushes something that it shouldn't have done. And that'll be the rallying point for some anti-AI movement. I think the other part that is if you kind of go really far out on the fringes of this, is how far AI from a voice, as Erin said, and video capability is coming. And I've had this conversation actually with some regulators and some tech company CEOs that said there's actually a very good chance that one of the big impacts that we're not expecting from AI is it increases the importance of in-person meetings again. That we will actually go away from video meetings because you will no longer be able to authenticate if the person you're sitting across from is actually a real person or not anymore. And that the importance of in-person meetings actually will rise up again. That's a really interesting viewpoint. Because that is already occurring, right? Some of the major custodians in our business have been hacked using voice authentication systems, right? Where hackers have gone in, called somebody, got in their voice, and been able to get through that second layer of defense. So some of the biometric measures that we have today, voice, face recognition, thumbprints, that's going to get wiped out like almost immediately now from AI. So those security measures don't work. So are we going to see more of a pushback to the only way to authenticate that Tyrone's real is to go see Tyrone in person and sit down with him? I think that there is some possibility of that, right? Like, yeah, it waved. That's just AI waving. No, it heard the name and it responded, right? So I think that's a really interesting conversation. Now, I don't know that there's much to action on that now. Those are more like philosophical future parts of this. What I will say, though, is if you look at the behavior of high net worth individuals, they have not moved away from in-person meetings and local-ish advisors. And actually, if you look at the data there, high net worth individuals are picking larger firms at a higher rate than ever before. So I know that firms like to say, hey, I've got this niche area. Reality is high net worth individuals are actually gravitating more and more to larger firms than at any other time in US history. I think part of that is trust and security. I don't think it's a better service or delivery, but I think fundamentally they look at that as more secure than smaller firms. So that's what, Cerulli, if you get that data and look at it, has been showing for the last couple of years. So depending on where you're playing in the market, that is a big move that's occurring out there right now.
Ooh, okay, so a lot to unpack there. We could probably have a whole separate webinar just on that. But I don't think you're wrong, because like anything, people are going to bifurcate, have their opinions. There'll be those kind of deniers in technology. It is what it is. But the majority of us are going to continue to move forward and utilize what's in front of us to make us more efficient, faster, better, smarter, all the things, right? So I think that's a really interesting point that you bring up. And just before we move on to the other existential question that we have for this group, Jamie, just want to pick on you one more time because I want to hear about your firm strategy specifically, about how you're working with your advisors to bring that, happy medium together of tech and human.
Yeah, I mean, look, I actually would say I'm still more forward on human than anything else. I think our technology enables our client experience, but I would say that it's people first. I think great companies and great advisory firms have great advisors, and I think that is first and foremost. If you have great advisors, it's really hard to be a great firm. So there's a lot of articles out there, the war on talent or whatever in our space, and we still don't have enough young advisors in this space. So that there's a premium on finding, great people, investing in them, giving them a runway. And even if they decide to leave and go somewhere else, that's good for the whole industry. And I don't think firms should see that as a negative. Like if I, help somebody come in, they work with me for 5 years and they go off and start their own firm somewhere else, like that's awesome. Like we did a great job. Now, like you got to go bring somebody else in. But that's a great thing because we need 18,000 firms getting better, not just our firm. From the technology piece, the biggest thing that we did this year was really pull everything together into a client experience portal, including the banking and trust world. So that's actually pretty rare that people can pipe all that data into one place. One of the benefits I have is we have the trust side here. But if you try to work with trust companies and pull that trust information into your CX, you'll find very quickly it is incredibly difficult to do. Even getting banking information down to transaction level is very difficult to do. You might be able to get account balances with some of the aggregators, but we actually got partnered with Wealth Access and the banking system are actually able to pull in transactional data in there too, which is actually really cool. That gives you a much better idea of like what the client's spending their money on, how they're interacting, and the clients like seeing it. There's been a huge, we've really only rolled that out for about 2 months, but clients absolutely love being able to log into one place and actually see transactional data, not just their account balances.
Thank you for that context. And now we have about 11, 12 minutes left. So final question for all of you. Obviously, things are changing very fast. We made that point early on in this conversation, and we're all just trying to keep up with constant innovation and those rising expectations. So Tyrone, given your unique position, the decisions you make today will influence the experience of hundreds of financial planners and their clients numbering, like you said, in the tens of thousands. So what does the financial advice delivery experience look like for your stakeholders in 5 years? And where are you investing or putting stakes in the ground?
So we're investing a lot of time and money now into voice to voice AI. So the goal is to have 401 simply be voice to voice. So we put out a demo. I'm excited to put out the one we're about to put out, but put out one a couple weeks ago where we speak to our CRM and we can say whatever, and it just spins it up. New client onboarding email. It sends the email, puts the notes in Notion. So I'm very big on voice to voice. So we're spending a lot of time and effort there with an elite developer right now to make sure that the entire 401 experience is voice to voice. What we eventually want to happen is do that same thing where the client is experiencing. So as far as AI goes, my strategy is this. We've had clients kind of opt out of the notes AI thing. So we don't do it. So we try to use AI internally, again, to create a better experience for them. So we shied away from that. So we don't use AI in our meetings anymore. But what we do want to do is we want to train a 401 AI agent that a client interacts with before they get to us, right? Whether that's through a mobile app or on our website. But we want that to be really, really, really well done so that they're almost experiencing what it's like to be with us. And immediately when they say, they may have get the answers that they wanted, what are the fees, this, that, or the third, it eventually kicks them to us, but they go right into our flow. And not the onboarding flow, but the flow of their experiencing. Again, this is the 401 Circle app. This is the tools that 401s you test it, use it out, right? See if you like Kubera. See what it's like to have your financial plan in Notion. And they're experiencing that before they actually get to us. So I think that's what we want in the future, because eventually what we want is this. Our fees will never go up. They'll always go down. Our goal is to drive our fees to zero. And then eventually folks that want the advice get it. And let's say they want, oh, okay, I want to use Kubera, just kind of like a net worth tracking, so on and so forth. But I only want advice on demand, push button, right? Connect me with Tyrone. And then they're billed for that time, right? And then that's it. But it's all automated. They're kicked the invoice, but they've already inputted that information, invoice, they hit pay, whatever. On our end, it comes to us. We see it, move this to Notion, right? Follow up, this, that, or whatever. So we're really focusing on building that out. So it's almost a one-of-one as far as the experience that is away from us and then the one that is curated with us. And it's really cool to do. Not sure if we ever get there, but man, it makes for some kick-ass demos.
I was going to
So we're
say, it
excited
sounds
about
great.
that. So we'll see. TBD.
Well, obviously, all very exciting. I think that's really interesting, your point around kind of on-demand advice. So that's certainly something I will be following, because everyone knows the Amazon effect, the Netflix effect, curated, personalized experiences. We've seen the headlines. And so to get to that point to say, I just want this specific piece of advice in this moment for this particular reason, would be an incredible place to get to. But I think in the meantime, it's still about, like we said in the beginning, democratizing it all so people have access at the end of the day. So really interesting perspective. Thank you, Tyrone. Aaron, want to talk to you about, from Carson's perspective, what does the financial advice delivery experience look like in, say, the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think all of us know we have this idea, like you said before, of what 5 to 10 years is, and then we're all going to be wrong because it is changing so fast at this moment. Whatever we think is right will not even exist. But where I see this going is, I agree that the do-it-yourself on-demand advice, that is the way that the economy in the world has been going, is everything is on demand. And that is going to become a bigger primer. I also think we're going to see much more diversity in who our clients are and who our advisors are. And this has been needed for a long time. In order for us to look at the whole United States, we need to make sure we have ways to offer everything to everybody that they need it. It's one of the things I love about all the work Tyrone has done is, he's talked a lot about the unbanked and making sure that we find a way to help others. And that is going to be the thing that all advisors need, is how do we offer more services to more people in a way that is cost affordable to them? Every advisor out there has consistently been fighting for the, same 10% of the population in the United States. And there is so much more that we can offer. And as we look at what these new technologies are and how do we make advisors more efficient, that gives them the ability to help more people. That also goes hand in hand with an aging advisor population, individuals retiring, and these young individuals coming up are also looking for this way to help more people like them. And when, I came in the industry 20 years ago, there was not a lot of 20-year-olds that were, here's some money, Aaron. So you worked with those that were a decade or two older than you. And now what we're seeing is many individuals are finding ways to work with individuals like themselves. And so we're going to see much more tools of how do you help individuals who either come the same economic background as you, are individuals who are from different ethnic groups. we're going to see much more advisors coming in and helping those around them, which is something Carson has focused on for a long time. You know, we have a big focus on our DE&I efforts and making sure that we're bringing more women and people of color into the industry so that we can help more people. And that is going to continue not to just be a focus for Carson, but for many of the firms out there. I also think there's this really interesting thing happening that is happening at the same time in our industry, but we almost act like they're two different sides of the coin. The retirement side has been doing some really interesting things with financial wellness programs. And financial wellness programs and wealth are really starting to come together at this point, that there has been some really cool wellness tools that have been offered, whether it's do it yourself, the ability for employees to see how are they doing on this daily basis. And I think we're going to see much more of the wealth and retirement side coming together and finding a way to bridge those tools, much to Tyrone's point. You know, maybe they're not coming to Carson. Maybe there's going to be the new tool out there that allows everyone to stay with Tyrone forever. And those are the areas that we want to help our advisors find something that they can keep that client from when they're 20 to when they're 80, to bring in those successor advisors into their firm and really help multiple generations of the family.
Oh, absolutely. And our industry is so focused on accumulation. And to your point, Aaron, not so much that like decumulation phase, right? So I think there's going to be tons of opportunity there for advisors, like you said, really, for lack of a better term, that cradle to grave experience, right? And I'm obsessed with this idea that we're seeing this convergence of industries. I think almost everyone brought it up on this call, where, you know, you're seeing the convergence of healthcare and wellness and, you know, insurance even, and it's coming all together finally to actually have that holistic view of your life and not just the financial snapshot. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Absolutely. All right, Jamie, it's on you to bring this one home. All right.
That was
What are
bad
your
planning.
predictions the next 5 years or so? You know, what can we expect when it comes to the financial advice delivery landscape?
Yeah, so a couple quick things. I do think we're going to see, as we've kind of touched on, this broader arrangement of services and offerings come to the advice world in a more connected manner. So I think that is first and foremost the biggest change that's going to happen in this industry in the next 5 years. So it is the kind of stuff that's on the corners of it today. Tax is almost in here. Trust is almost in here. Insurance is here. Investing's here. But we're going to see, you know, 8 to 10 different services. I really am interested on where cash apps end up in this space. Cash apps, if you talk to like 12 and 13-year-olds, I mean, they can sign up for those. You don't need parents to sign off. And they're moving money, you know, by downloading stuff on their phones at 12 and 13 now, which is really going around kind of all existing financial service companies. But that's going to end up in our world at some point. The next one is the employer side. Really interesting space, as Aaron mentioned. The financial wellness, retirement, distribution, and portability is kind of starting to change. And who our clients are, I do know some people trying to do this. I think there's going to be more company offerings of wealth management and investment management offered through the company to employees long term. And if you think about like a Microsoft being able to offer everybody there the ability to invest their assets outside for 10 basis points, and they're keeping 2 of them. That's a really interesting phenomena that could occur very quickly out there. Regulation wise, it's a little hard to do today, but I do think we're going to see some people look at that. Every large company out there is looking at how do we keep people here, offer more services. And then I do very much believe that healthcare and health planning is coming into this space. If you look at what I think they're coming more to us than we're going to them right now. So I love that Tyrone's doing that. But places like Chalice, multi-factor early detection, cancer screening, there are financial firms and advisory firms using that now today with clients. If you look at the family office world, they will wrap in, right, doctors and things like that into their offerings today. They're almost like, what was that, the old BMW thing or Mercedes? You look at what they had, and then 5 years later, that's the standard in other cars. That's a little bit of the family office world. That stuff's just kind of being rolled out. That's going to be here relatively soon, too, because I think to Tyrone's point, if somebody's health is going down, who cares about how much money they have?
Yep. I think that's a great way to end this conversation, which was just incredibly enlightening from top to bottom. So, Aaron, Jamie, Tyrone, thank you so much for your contributions today. And thank you to our shared community as headline sponsors of Advice Tech Live. Be sure to follow all of these leaders on social media and check out their virtual booth to stay engaged. Obviously, all three of them have a lot going on, and they're leaders in our space for a reason. Just a quick note that coming up next is FinTech Speed Demo Group B, which includes Nitrogen, Redtail, FMG, FP Pathfinder, and Estate Guru. So certainly stick around for that. And I encourage you to join Allison Susko for the next session. But in the meantime, now is just a great time to grab a quick bio break, coffee stretch before you join the next session. On behalf of all of us, thank you so much for tuning in.